Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. I want to say thank you to everybody that is sharing my videos and my recipes and helping my channel to grow. I'm trying to make it grow and share with as many people as possible. And I really appreciate my patrons that are helping to support my channel. And that is helping me to buy my ingredients and share with everybody else. Today I'm going to show you my pear cranberry pie. It's one of my favorite pies for the holidays. And I know it looks like I have a lot going on, but it's really not too difficult. And it's the filling, the crust, and the topping. So 3 different parts to this recipe. But I've got my oven preheated to 400. And I've already toasted some walnuts and I've chopped them up in my food processor for part of the crust and part of the topping. You don't have to use walnuts. Or you could use pecans or almonds or a different kind of nut. I think I've made this pie with every kind of nut before, but walnuts is what I'm using today. And I chopped it in my food processor because I want the nut pieces to be pretty fine. Not like a powder, but pretty smallish chunks. And I didn't wash my food processor. I'm gonna chop up my cranberries, and it's okay if there's some nuts mixed in there too. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start cutting up my pears. So I've got 4 Bartlett pears, and they're still a little bit green and a little bit on the crunchy side, which is what you want. If you use super ripe pears, they'll fall apart more during the baking process and the mixing process. And you could peel them if you want to, but I like the skins on. So I'm gonna cut these up into some biggish chunks and put in this bowl, and I've got about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice that I'll sprinkle on so they don't get super brown. But just make sure to cut out the core and cut off any bad spots. Bite-sized pieces is what you would like. If you don't like cranberries, you could do frozen thawed cherries for this recipe and be a pear cherry pie. You could also do raspberries or blueberries. Really, whatever you like if you don't like cranberries, but it's such a fun festive pie, and it's red and green. Perfect for the holiday. So I'm just gonna keep going with my pears. Again, cut off any bad spots. So once you've got all of your pears cut up, put them in your bowl, and I'm gonna pour on my 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And just toss it around. So move that aside. And I've got 3 cups of fresh cranberries. I've picked through them, not very well. There's a stem. So I've got 3 cups of fresh cranberries. You could use frozen and then thawed. And I'm just gonna put them in my food processor. And you don't want to puree them, but you want them to be a pretty fine chop. Bring back my bowl. Get the blade out of there. And of course, if you are worried about your pears turning a little brown, they're going to turn a little bit pink now, which is just fine. I'm going to clean up, move all of this out of the way, and then I'll show you the rest of the filling. So to my pears, my cranberries, and my lemon juice, I've got a 1/3 cup of honey, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm going to sprinkle on my cornstarch first, and my cinnamon, and then stir in my honey. And just give this a good stir. You want this honey, cornstarch, and cinnamon to all be evenly mixed around. And I know it doesn't seem like very much honey, or sugar, which I'll give you the equivalents to sugar. But it doesn't seem like very much for how tart cranberries are. But the pears are very sweet. And then we also have kind of a sugar crumble topping that goes on top. And so that will also add sweetness. But we'll get to the topping in just a minute. For the crust, not too many ingredients. And I'm not even going to roll it out. This crust is super easy to mix together. And then we just pat it into a pie dish. My butter is not as soft as I would like it to be. So I'm going to put it in the microwave for just a minute. And that was just a few seconds, not a minute. And it's soft enough that I can mash it with my fork. So this is a ½ cup of butter, and I have 1 cup and a quarter of my gluten-free flour. Whoop. I have 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of coconut sugar, which you could use honey or brown sugar, whatever, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then a ½ cup of toasted chopped walnuts. But first, I'm just gonna mash my butter into my flour with just a fork. You could also do this with a pastry blender or in the food processor, but a fork is super easy. I'm actually gonna pour in my coconut sugar and salt as well. And once your butter is kind of in biggish chunks like this, I'm actually going to start using my hands, but I'm going to add in my ½ cup of toasted chopped walnuts and then just start rubbing it all together. Wash your hands and then just give it a stir, see what you've got. There's still some pretty big chunks, but that is just fine. I'm going to mix my egg. Once you've got your egg all mixed together, just pour this in. And just stir this all together. Once there's no dry pockets of flour and it's starting to stick together like this, bring over your pie dish. And it's a deep dish pie dish. And I have a foil lined cookie sheet here, bowl scraper, and just dump it into your pie dish. First thing I do is spread it out, and I'm just going to start pressing it into my pie dish. And you want to go up the sides. I'm not worried if it will come up over the edge here, but I want it to go up to the top. And once you've got it pretty well packed and even in the middle, I'm going to start going around the edge. And you want to try to make sure it's all the same thickness around the edge. I try to get into the corner of the pie dish so I don't have a really thick corner. Super fast and easy pie crust. This is one of my favorite pie crusts. So bring back your filling, and I'm just going to give it a good stir. You'll notice how much liquid has been released from the pears and the cranberries. And that's why we let it sit there while we were making the crust, is to give this time to juice. And then that cornstarch that we added in there will help thicken this up while it's baking. Once you've got that all stirred together, bring back your pie crust. Double check. And then just pour this in. And then I just level it out. Fruit pies always cook down. I've made this recipe in a 9x13 casserole dish before. And then it turns into little pie bars. And you can take that to a family get together. And you can get smaller pieces, and they're little squares. you would just do the same amount of crust and just spread it out in the bottom of a 9x13. You wouldn't need to go up the sides. But if you wanted to, you could just do a double batch of the crust, and then you could have an edge. And then you would double the filling, and it fits perfect in a 9x13. And then you would also double the topping as well. So this will go in the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes while we make the topping. And again, that is at 400. After the 30 minutes, we'll turn the oven down to 375. But bring over your topping ingredients. I have another half cup of butter, soft, room temperature, but not melting. 3/4 cup of flour, gluten-free flour. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just gonna mix this and rub it through my fingers to make coarse-ish looking breadcrumbs. You could also do this in a food processor as well. But you'll notice the topping is very similar to the crust. If you were gonna use brown sugar, you would rub the brown sugar and the flour and the butter all together at the same time. And once you're starting to get really big chunks of butter like this, I'm gonna add in my nuts. And this is, just shy of 1 cup of toasted chopped walnuts. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing, rub this together through my fingers until the nuts are all mixed in. Once it's starting to hold together into big chunks of butter and nuts and flour, we can add in our honey. I have a 1/3 cup of honey and 1 teaspoon of molasses. And the molasses gives it the flavor that brown sugar would. You could use coconut sugar. You could also use maple syrup. And then just mix this all together. It's going to be really sticky. And I know you're saying, this is not a crumble topping, but it works really well. My pie has about 20 minutes left in the oven. I'm gonna stick this in the fridge while we're waiting for the pie and clean everything up. I'm so sorry. The neighbors are cutting down trees. But my pie has gone for 30 minutes. Turn your oven down to 375. Get your topping out of the fridge. And it's firmed up quite a bit. Because it's not a very crumbly topping, I'm just going to get spoonfuls of it and dollop it on top of my pie. And kind of spread it out a little bit. I'm going to use my fingers. It's a little easier to spread this out than the spoon and the spatula. But just kind of flatten it out, lay it on here, be careful because it is hot, and cover the entire top. And work quickly because your butter will melt on this hot pie. So once you've got this in an even layer, and this will go back into the oven for about another 30 to 35 minutes. You want the juices to be bubbling up around, but I'm gonna flip it around and put it in my oven so it's the other way now. And if at any time you notice that your crust, you'll notice, our crust isn't coming up over the sides, but you don't want it to burn. And if you notice your topping is getting a little bit too brown, just put some foil over the top. It's a messy pie, but this is always why I put a foil lined cookie sheet under my pies. fruit pies make such a sticky, sticky mess. But they sure look good. And you can see that my topping is golden brown around the edges. My filling bubbled up enough that the crust didn't have any concern of getting overcooked there. But this just needs to cool off to room temperature. You can put it in the fridge if you want to, but you want it to be, oh, just barely warm or at room temperature to serve, or even in the fridge, so it will hold a slice. So I'm gonna let that cool off and then we'll cut into it. My pie's been cooling off, oh, for about 3 hours. It's still just barely warm on the bottom. And I've mentioned before when I make pies, I have a really kind of a deep plate here that my pie dish fits into, especially one like this where it makes a mess all down the side of your pie dish and it's really sticky. But this way it doesn't get your fridge all sticky or your surface or your hands when you're moving it. So that's what I do. Make sure to go all the way through the crust at the bottom. Make sure it's loosened along the edge. And first piece is always a challenge. It looks really good. Let me turn it around so you can see. It is holding a slice very well. And fresh whipped cream. You would never know that this topping isn't made with brown sugar. It gets a little bit of a crust on the top like a brown sugar topping does, but you wouldn't know that it isn't brown sugar. And the crust, the nuts in the topping and the crust, just give it that little bit of extra crunch. And if you've ever been a little bit nervous about making a pie crust that you just pat into your pie dish and form it that way, this one works really well. As you can see, it holds a slice. My piece of pie kind of fell a little bit, but that's only because it's still a little bit warm. But if you put this in the fridge, it will be a solid piece of pie. Perfect for the holidays. When you have so much chocolate and candy and other things, there's nothing like a fruit pie with just the right amount of sweet to go for your holiday dinner or brunch. This is really good as breakfast. And I know a lot of people don't think pie is a good breakfast treat, but I think so. It has all the things in it that you would eat for breakfast. Fruit and nuts. Why not? And you'll notice you can't see that the pears are green, but we know that they were green. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday, and we'll see you on the next video.